What if the very thing you've spent your whole life running from is the only thing that could ever set you free? There's a part of you hidden in the dark, not evil, not broken, just unseen. Carl Jung called it the shadow. And it's not your enemy, it's your missing piece. You weren't taught to face it, you were taught to ignore it, to smile when you were breaking, to be strong when you felt like dying. But the truth is this: what we suppress controls us. What we avoid becomes our prison. You don't become whole by pretending to be perfect. You become whole by embracing the parts of yourself you were told to hate. This isn't self-help. This is soul recovery, and everything changes when you finally turn around and face the darkness. Carl Jung didn't invent the shadow. He just gave it a name and dared to look it in the eye. The shadow is everything you've repressed, everything you were told was wrong, shameful, or too much. Your anger, your fear, your desire, your truth. It doesn't disappear just because you deny it. It waits, and it shows up in subtle ways. In the people you judge, the emotions you can't control, the dreams that leave you shaking. Jung's own life was shaped by this descent. In his Red Book, he described visions and symbols that terrified him. He wasn't going insane. He was meeting himself for the first time. One does not become enlightened, Jung wrote, by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You think you're scared of the dark. You should be more afraid of never knowing who you really are. This isn't a new idea, it's ancient. In every sacred story there is a descent, a fall, a journey into the underworld. Inanna, stripped of everything at the gates of the dead. Christ, descending into the tomb. Buddha, facing Mara beneath the Bodhi tree. Orpheus, descending to save what was lost. These are not tales of defeat. They're blueprints for transformation. The soul must pass through darkness to find its light. The modern world hides this truth. It fears the dark. It fears pain. It fears silence. But the ancients knew there is no real power without the fall. You cannot rise until something in you dies. Not your essence, but your illusion, your mask, your false identity, your fear of yourself. The descent is not a mistake. It's the path. It's not where you break. It's where you awaken. Pain is not the enemy. It's the raw material of transformation. You can numb, to run from it, pretend it's not there, but pain is patient and it holds a secret. Buried inside your suffering is the seed of your awakening. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not by avoiding pain, but by turning toward it with presence. Real healing doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from understanding what hurts it and why. In alchemy, base metals become gold through fire, so does the soul. The pain you carry isn't proof that you're weak. It's proof that you feel deeply, that something within you refuses to be silenced. And if you can sit with it, really sit with it, you'll hear a voice that's been waiting for you for a very long time. Your truth. But if facing the shadow is so powerful, why does the world resist it? Because a person who owns their darkness cannot be controlled. Society teaches us to be good, polite, productive, predictable. It punishes rage, suppresses grief, shames desire, and praises numbness. Why? Because a person who is disconnected from their true self is easier to manage. Jung warned us. The shadow isn't just personal, it's collective. Entire cultures repress what they fear, then they project it onto outsiders, enemies, and scapegoats. The result? War, hatred, division. Not because we're evil, but because we are unconscious. But one person, just one, who dares to look inward, who dares to reclaim their lost self, becomes a light the system can't dim. You are not dangerous because of your darkness. You are dangerous because you're no longer afraid of it. So what actually happens When you finally face the darkness, you don't become someone else. You become who you were before the world told you who to be. Your mind clears, your emotions soften, your intuition sharpens. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop proving and start knowing. You stop chasing and start returning. You begin to see the shadow was never your enemy. It was your protector, your teacher, your mirror. It was carrying the parts of you that had nowhere else to go. When you face it, you reclaim your energy, your voice, your life. Everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You're no longer fragmented, no longer pretending, no longer hiding. And that kind of freedom cannot be taken. And now, you stand at the edge, not of darkness, but of something deeper, mystery. Because the truth is, this path never really ends. You don't complete yourself, you meet yourself again and again and again. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and yet that terror becomes peace when you finally stop running." So, ask yourself, who would you be if you stopped fearing your own soul? The answers don't live in books, they live in silence, in presence, in the places you've avoided. The darkness isn't the opposite of the light, it's the doorway to it. Walk through. Most people are living a lie. Not the kind you tell others, but the one you whisper to yourself, the lie that says you're fine, that you've moved on, that the darkness inside you is gone. But what if I told you that everything you're avoiding, your fears, your guilt, your anger, your shame, is not just haunting you? It's controlling you. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And maybe that's what you've been doing, calling it bad luck, or destiny, or just the way you are. But what if none of that is true? What if the thing you've been running from is the doorway to your power? Carl Jung didn't just study psychology, he lived it. He descended into madness, into the parts of himself that terrified him. He gave up everything that felt safe, everything that made sense, and he didn't do it by accident. Jung chose to face the darkness, not just for himself, but for all of us. In what he later called his confrontation with the unconscious, Jung entered a space few dare to visit, a place where visions blurred with reality, where the voices of his soul spoke louder than the world outside. And instead of fighting it, he listened. He painted the figures he saw, wrote down their messages, dialogued with his fears. He let the chaos inside him speak, and what he discovered changed everything. He found that within the very center of that chaos was something sacred, a guide, a voice, a truth buried beneath the rubble of his own mind. He later wrote the Red Book, a mystical, cryptic journal that was never meant to be published. Because it wasn't a book, it was a mirror, a map of the inner world, one that shows what happens when you stop pretending and finally face yourself. So what exactly is this darkness? Jung called it the shadow. But don't confuse it with something evil. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's everything you've buried. Your pain, your rage, your unmet desires, your hidden power. The parts of yourself you've learned to fear because someone once told you they were wrong. As children, we're taught to be polite, to behave, to hide our emotions, and little by little, we might cut away pieces of ourselves just to be accepted. But those pieces don't disappear. They go underground. They become the shadow. And while you're trying to live a good life, your shadow whispers in the dark. It sabotages your relationships, fuels your addictions, projects your own flaws onto others. It waits more for you to notice. Because the truth is haunting. If you don't face the shadow, it will possess you, and you'll spend your whole life thinking the world is the problem, when really it's the reflection. But here's where everything changes. The shadow isn't a curse, it's an invitation. The goal isn't to destroy it. The goal is to integrate it. Jung was fascinated by alchemy, not as a science but as a spiritual metaphor. Turning lead into gold wasn't about metals, it was about the soul, about taking the dense, heavy matter of your unconscious, the guilt, the fear, the suppressed desires, and transforming it into light. This process has a name: individuation. It's the slow, painful, beautiful path of becoming whole. You begin in darkness, in what the alchemists called nigredo, the blackening, the breaking down, the death of illusion. Then comes albedo, the whitening. Clarity begins, truth returns, and finally, rubedo, the reddening, the integration, the birth of the true self. This is not self-improvement. It's self-remembering, a sacred fire that burns away who you thought you were, so the real you can emerge. But what happens when an entire world refuses to look inward? When a society denies its shadow,